You thought healing would make life easier, that if you worked on yourself, people would meet you with more love, more respect, more understanding. You thought they would finally see you. But here's the brutal truth. The more you heal, the more you change. And the more you change, the more some people begin to quietly slip away. At first, it feels confusing. You're doing all the right things, setting boundaries, speaking your truth, protecting your energy. You're not being cruel. You're just not abandoning yourself anymore. Yet somehow, they start pulling back. The calls get fewer, the messages shorter, the air between you colder, and you can't help but wonder, am I the problem? But listen closely. This is not rejection. This is the hidden cost of growth. Because when you begin to heal, you stop pretending. You stop performing. You stop living by the unspoken rules others secretly depended on. And here's the thing. When you stop wearing your mask, other people are forced to look at theirs. And not everyone is ready for that mirror. That's why healing can push people away. Not because you've become unlovable, but because you've become unmanageable. Not because you lost yourself, but because you finally found yourself. And in this video, I'm going to break down 5 brutal reasons why healing pushes people away. Reasons grounded not only in psychology, but in real human experience. By the end, you'll understand that their distance isn't a sign that you failed. It's proof that you've finally stopped betraying yourself and started living as who you really are. When you begin to heal, you start breaking rules you didn't even know you were living by. Not laws, not traditions, but the silent, unspoken rules that shaped how people related to you. Maybe you were always the listener, the one who carried everyone else's secrets, the one who said, "Don't worry about me, I'll be fine." Maybe you were the peacekeeper, the one who smoothed over arguments, absorbed tension, and played small just to keep the room calm. Carl Jung called this the persona, the social mask we wear to survive in the world. It's not fake, it's not evil. It's simply the version of yourself that others found easiest to accept. The polite mask, the agreeable mask, the dependable mask. But when you start healing, you begin taking that mask off. You say what you actually feel. You set boundaries. You stop laughing at jokes that humiliate you. You stop saying yes when every part of you is screaming no. Carl Jung once said, "The persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself and others think one is." Healing forces you to confront that truth, because the moment you stop living behind the mask, the moment you reveal your real self, everything around you begins to shift. And here's the truth most people don't admit. When you take off your mask, you also strip away the comfort of those around you. Because if you're not playing your role anymore, they have to confront the ways they depended on that role. Healing is that kind of change. It doesn't just transform you, it rearranges every relationship you've ever had. And some people, they won't like the new arrangement because it means they can no longer use your silence as their safety net. That's the first reason. Healing pushes people away. It changes the rules of the game. And not everyone wants to play by the new rules. But there's another reason, one that cuts even deeper. Because when you heal, you don't just stop playing the game, you also become much harder to control. And that brings us to the second reason. Healing makes you harder to manipulate. And that's exactly why some people start slipping away. Think about it. Before, you might have said yes, just to keep the peace. You might have tolerated jokes that cut too deep. You might have gone along with decisions you hated just to avoid conflict. But now you see the patterns. You recognize guilt trips. You notice when someone's words don't match their actions, and you don't play along anymore. Carl Jung explained this through the concept of the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves that we repress, deny, or bury. When someone tries to control you, often they're projecting their own shadow onto you. They don't want to face their insecurity, their fear, their weakness, so they dump it onto you, hoping you'll carry it for them. And when you're unhealed, you do carry it. You absorb their anger. You take the blame. You bend yourself into shapes that make them more comfortable. But healing flips the script. You start saying, "That's not mine to carry." You set boundaries that feel like rejection to people who were used to your compliance, and suddenly, the control they once had over you disappears. That's why healing feels so threatening to them. Because deep down, they don't just lose the old you, they lose the easy access to their favorite tool, your silence, your guilt, your obedience. Carl Jung wrote, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is." When you heal, you stop being a container for other people's shadows. And for many, that's unbearable. So they distance themselves, not because you did anything wrong, but because you stopped being their mirror, their scapegoat, their puppet. That's the second reason healing pushes people away. Because healing is freedom, and your freedom exposes their chains. But there's another reason too, one that's even more uncomfortable. Because when you start rising, when you start growing, your progress has a way of exposing everyone else's stagnation. And that's where we go next. Here's a truth most people can't admit. Your healing doesn't just change you, it changes the way others see themselves. Because when you begin to grow, when you set boundaries, protect your energy, and live with integrity, you become a mirror. And that mirror doesn't always reflect something people want to see. Maybe your old friends are still living in chaos, but you've chosen peace. Maybe your family still thrives on drama, but you no longer play the role of savior or victim. Maybe your partner is still running from their demons, but you've started facing yours. And suddenly, your progress feels like their failure. Your strength feels like their weakness. Your clarity feels like their confusion. Carl Jung explained this through projection. Projection happens when we see in others the things we refuse to face in ourselves. So when people see you growing, healing, becoming more authentic, instead of being inspired, they may feel attacked because your light reveals their shadows. And instead of stepping into that light, many would rather turn away from you. This is why your victories don't always get celebrated, why your progress sometimes earns silence instead of applause, why the very people who once cheered for you now keep their distance. It's not that your healing is wrong, it's that your healing is evidence of what they haven't done. Jung once wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But here's the twist. Instead of letting that irritation lead them inward, some people will simply push you away, so they don't have to deal with it at all. And yes, it hurts, it feels personal, but it's not. Their reaction says less about you, and everything about the work they still refuse to do. That's the third reason healing pushes people away, because your growth makes their stagnation impossible to ignore. But there's something even deeper, something more painful. Because healing doesn't just expose where others are stuck, it also tears apart the very bonds that once kept you close. Because when you rise higher, you don't just change yourself, you change the gravity of every relationship around you. And that takes us to reason number 4. Healing doesn't just shift your habits, it dismantles the very bonds that once held your connections together. Think about it. Maybe the friendships you had were built on complaining, gossip, or shared pain. Maybe family ties were held together by unspoken roles, you being the fixer, the caregiver, the one who always sacrificed. Maybe certain relationships survived because of trauma bonds, cycles of hurt, apology, and dependency that kept you hooked. When you heal, you break those cycles. You stop feeding relationships with the energy of your wounds. You stop being available for patterns that kept you stuck, and suddenly, the bond weakens, because if the relationship was built on your pain, what happens when that pain no longer drives you? Carl Jung described this process as part of individuation, the journey of becoming your true, whole self. He explained that individuation isn't about separating from people entirely. It's about no longer living through them, no longer defining yourself by the roles, the wounds, or the patterns that once shaped you. And here's the hard truth. When you stop living through others, some of them will feel abandoned, not because you rejected them, but because you stopped playing the part that kept the relationship alive. That's why healing often feels like loss, because bonds built on pain dissolve when pain is no longer your language. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But that privilege comes at a cost. It means leaving behind relationships that only knew you as broken. That's the fourth reason healing pushes people away. Because healing doesn't just end your suffering, it ends the agreements your suffering once sustained. And this leads to the final, most personal reason of all, the one that reveals why healing is not rejection, but transformation. By now you've seen it. Healing doesn't just change how you live, it changes who you allow into your life. Because once you've tasted peace, you can't go back to chaos. Once you've set boundaries, you can't unsee the places where you had none. And once you've met your true self, you can't keep shrinking to fit the version of you others were comfortable with. This is where it hurts most. Because the people you love may interpret your growth as abandonment. They'll say you've changed, and they're right. They'll say you're distant, and they're right. But what they won't admit is this. What they miss isn't you. It's the version of you that tolerated their unhealed patterns. Carl Jung understood this. He wrote that the self is not discovered by avoiding conflict, but by embracing it, by integrating every part of who you are, and refusing to live as a fragment of yourself. When you step into that wholeness, you naturally stop being available for dynamics that drain you, and that's why people pull away, because they don't just lose access to your time, they lose access to the parts of you that carried their wounds for them, the part that always said yes, the part that absorbed blame, the part that bent until it broke. But here's the truth. Their distance is not betrayal, it's simply life rearranging itself around your healing. Those who can grow with you will stay, those who can't will fade, and though it feels like loss, it's actually the first taste of freedom. Carl Jung once said, "In the process of individuation, a person becomes what they have always been." That's what healing gives you. Not more masks, not more roles, but your real self. Finally alive, finally unbroken. So yes, healing can push people away, but it also pulls the right ones closer, the ones who love not the mask, not the persona, not the brokenness, but you. And that's the ultimate reason healing is worth it. So if healing has cost you people, don't mistake it for failure. It's not rejection, it's refinement. The truth is simple. The more you become yourself, the fewer people can stay who only knew your mask. But that's not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your freedom. Carl Jung once wrote, "In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order." That's what healing creates, a deeper order, a truer life, a self you no longer have to hide. You may lose people, but you'll find alignment, you'll find peace, and most of all, you'll finally find you. If this message spoke to you, share it with someone who might need it too. And if you want more videos like this, please consider subscribing, because together, we're going even deeper. And when you're ready, watch this next video, where I'll show you why healing can make you feel empty at first, and why that emptiness is actually the doorway to your true self.